Classic.
What do we need to do? What is one of the first things we need to do to take and control this shame and make sure this shame becomes a learning moment or learning opportunity rather than a punishing opportunity? Because I think that's where you really learn. You can use it as a learning thing.
Yes,
Hey, you know what? This is what you did. You know it wasn't the best of things to do. You know you could have done better than this.
yeah,
So take and do this rather than this is what I did. Oh my God, this is who I am.
absolutely. Literally, what you said there points exactly towards that is, towards moving through that. And again, it's how you look at things in regards to that. Okay, it's a whole judgment of self, but the irony of it is what is the evidence for that, and where is that evidence from? And a lot of that evidence is used from people who don't know you, or it's self-certified because that it must be true because I'm saying it to myself. And when you start to, and what we call that is it's taking the evidence to court. It's literally visualizing being in a courtroom. What is the evidence for these thoughts that you have about yourself? And what you'll find very quickly is there is no evidence or very little evidence. And that can be really useful to take that step back, Zach, and just look at things in a slightly different way. The other thing as well, which comes into it, which I say to a lot of people I work with, everybody has a story to tell, their own personal story, whether it's good, bad, or ugly. What matters is what you do about it now. Because what you do about it now determines what comes next. And it's absolutely paramount to see it that way. Absolutely paramount. And also, what this fits into is another piece. And I'm doing lots of little bits here, but they're all useful if people are listening to this in slightly different ways of dealing what we're talking about here is shame. And the other bit which comes into shame, which again, people have a very different understanding of it. We're back to stories and the impact it has, which is forgiveness, Zach. Forgiveness is a massive thing. And forgiveness is more so for yourself than for anybody else. It's not saying, oh, there, it doesn't matter that you hurt A, B, and C. It's about, okay, well, that's happened. This is where we are now. What we're going to do different going forwards, and how can we do that? Because to some degree, shame in what behaviour, and you talked about your grandfather there, how a lot of men deal with shame, they go down that route of punishment / self-harm. So drinking too much alcohol, taking drugs, going out and having illicit sex, whatever it might be, a lot of it is risk-taking behaviour because it's all down to I deserve it for what I have done. And that is far opposite than what forgiveness is for self and the importance of, I guess, taking that responsibility and doing something different going forwards. Do you know what I mean? That's what it's enough. There's that age old saying, put the whip down. You've whipped yourself enough. Put it
Yeah.
down. Now's the time to do something different if you want to do that. And I think that's the crux bit in it, that personal responsibility piece.
Yeah. Which is harder for somebody to overcome, self shame or shame that's brought upon you by someone else?
That's a really interesting one. Again, they are both difficult. I guess if the shame has been, well, they both. If the shame is brought on by somebody else, that helps in a way to see it from a different angle because it's somebody else than yourself. Because when
Hmm.
it's yourself doing it to yourself, then obviously that's going to be harder. But they both share that same thing of being able to take a step back from the evidence to look at that. We're back to that piece of forgiveness as well, of compassion for yourself. Where it's somebody else putting it on you or yourself, it's bringing it back to that. But like I said, it goes back to identifying those stories. What stories do you keep telling yourself in your head that's leading to that behavior, that emotional trigger of shame? Is it, like I said before, I'm not good enough, I'm not a real man, whatever it might be? And it could literally be writing those questions out or statements that you say to yourself and researching it. What does it mean to be a real man? What does it mean to be good enough? What does it mean to be, which is a classic in the UK at the moment, breadwinner? What does it mean to be a breadwinner in the
Yeah.
family? What does that actually mean? And is that actually who I am? Because all this shame, a lot of what underpins shame is people, men particularly, they don't know who they are. They've never been shown. So one of the issues in the UK for a lot of men is they don't necessarily have a role model per se. They don't know what it looks like. And the problem is when you are looking outside of yourself for the answers, and then you're scorned for doing that for experience, and then it's a shame is then put on you by somebody else, or you take that in on yourself. It makes it very difficult. But the irony in all this, Zach, is when you start to look at the evidence for why we have these stories playing in our head, at least shame and what other people are saying to you. Now, a lot of it doesn't even belong to us because it goes back to what we were saying before, Zach. We weren't born with it. So why are we taking it on and shaping our lives around things that are not true? And I don't know about you, Zach, from my personal experience, if I am willing in that moment to take the time to take a step back and be, if you want to call it state of awareness, presence, your mojo, what you find is you find the answer, which is inside ourselves. Yeah? Have you had that, Zach, where an issue, you've weighed up a situation, you kind of get that gut instinct? Have you had that?
Oh
Gut
yeah. Yeah.
feeling? Yeah, and if you think about those times when you've listened to that, how more favourable the outcomes were for you and everybody else.
Yep.
Those times, Zach, where you don't listen to your gut instinct, and look what happens differently.